I wanted to have this picture perfect family because I hadn't had it growing up, because I had thought it was a realistic possibility, because I had a very judgmental husband who I wanted to impress. I wanted to prove something to him and all the people around me. And I'm a pleaser. So you put all of that together, and it was like, well, my family will be happy if I have a good family, and my husband will be happy if I do a good job with the children, and I'll be proud because all I ever wanted to be was a mom. And if they can do it on TV, I can do it on my house. All of those things kind of put together made me want to have this thing that, again, not realistic, an ideal that I made my goal.
Welcome to the How It Feels to Be a Mother podcast, where we dive into the emotional complexities and varied experiences of motherhood. I'm your host, Sarah Broberg. This judgment-free zone is a place where mothers can express their authentic feelings and experiences as whole human beings. In each episode, we'll explore the catalyst question at the heart of this movement. How does it feel to be a mother? Through engaging discussions with mothers from diverse backgrounds from around the world, we'll explore the complexity of emotions along the continuum of motherhood. Join us as we speak with mothers from all walks of life, from those with infants to those with adult children, uncovering the vast emotional continuum of motherhood. Whether you find motherhood to be a blessing or a challenge or somewhere in between, sometimes all at once, this podcast is here to validate your feelings and to break the stigma, shame, and guilt that can often accompany maternal experiences. Tune in and be a part of a movement that empowers mothers to embrace the emotional depths of what it really feels like to be a mother. Join the conversation.
Welcome to How It Feels to Be a Mother. I'm your host, Sarah. Today, we meet Karina, a 47-year-old mother of three, ages 20, 17, and 14, who has navigated the complexities of divorce and single motherhood. Karina candidly shares her journey, reflecting on her own upbringing in a bilingual home with a Latin American mother and an American father, and how those experiences shaped her aspirations for her own family. We'll also explore the evolution of motherhood, how it changes as children grow, how personal growth parallels our children's development, and how the ideals we once had can shift dramatically in the face of reality. Karina offers insights into the importance of community, the challenges of being a single parent, and the continuous process of self-evaluation and growth. Join us as we explore the complexity of emotions along the continuum of motherhood. Hi, Karina. Thank you so much for joining us on How It Feels to Be a Mother. Before we jump into our catalyst question, I think it's always great to provide some context to your story. So if you wouldn't mind providing your age, your preferred pronouns, your relationship status, and then the ages of your children and their preferred pronouns. That's a lot.
It is. Let me see. I'm 47. I'm in a relationship, but I was divorced previously. My kids are, I go by her, she. My kids are 20, he, him, 17, she, her, and 14, he, him.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so here we go. Very first question. How does it feel to be a mother?
That is such a loaded question, right? We could do 1,000 podcasts on that question alone.
That's the plan.
Yeah, right. Exactly. How does it feel to be a mother? I would say for me, it's probably my greatest joy, but very cliche because I had obstacles and I had trauma and, our family went through a lot, and through all of it, they were kind of my sunshine. So for me, being a mother is truly my primary focus. I've put it over my career literally since I became a mother. And it's something I always wanted to be growing up. I didn't have it upon it. It wasn't my bonus time. It's like I didn't have a lot of other aspirations. I was just not that ambitious. I wanted to be a mom. So to me, how does it feel? It feels like my greatest and truest honor. And so I think that if I were to sum it up, it would just be, it feels great. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Does it feel like you thought it would?
Oh, no. Oh, no. I mean, I don't think any of us can really anticipate, right? What it's going to be like. We have ideas, but my idea was TV, movies. My idea of my own family was not what I had, but it was also not real. I had this idea of, a traditional pretty little home and a loving, adoring husband, sweet, well-behaved kids, and, just growing old together and having my family be close and cohesive and harmony all the time in every situation. And, I just had ideals that were obviously not realistic. So how does it feel? It feels so different. It was nothing at all like what I thought it would be. And I would say, even though it's not at all what I thought it would be, it's still pretty great. But if I were to have planned it out, I couldn't have begun to predict where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. How has the feeling of being a mother for you changed over time?
Oh, it's interesting, I think, with that one, because, you have older kids too. Mm-hmm. Initially, the responsibility feels so heavy, you can hardly grasp it. Mm-hmm. But then you realize what seemed like big responsibilities, are they nursing? Are they bottle feeding? Are they, diapering? Are they cloth? Whatever. All the early worries and stressors seem so small compared to now, when they're more interactive, engaged humans. So again, mine 14, 17, 20, the conversations that we have and the responsibilities and the challenges are so different. So it really evolves. I think parents don't care less, but they just have different worries as the kids get older.
You kind of in your previous answer touched on one of the themes that is sort of emerging from these conversations, which is like how the ways in which we were raised influence the ways we choose to raise our children. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about that for you?
Well, I was raised very non-traditionally. I was raised in a bilingual home, and my mom is from a Latin American country. So American dad, Hispanic mom in South Dakota, which is a very white traditional place. So I didn't have peanut butter and jelly, and I didn't have cable TV. And it wasn't because my family couldn't provide it, thankfully. It was just because my mom didn't know about it. So I didn't have brothers and sisters. I didn't have what most kids I knew had. I remember being so fascinated going to other kids' houses and seeing how they engaged with their families and their siblings. And probably part of the reason why I idealized family so much was because mine didn't fit what I saw on TV. I remember Family Ties and Cosby Show just being fascinating. Seeing that kind of engagement and those dialogues, because my house didn't look like that. So definitely, I think that the way we grew up, I think with, another generation back, the idea of family was a bit more traditional than it is now. But I think particularly with my experience, it was that much more where I kind of wanted, picture perfect. I wanted this thing that I hadn't had and that I thought was so possible.
And so then you think that influenced your parenting because did you try to create that or was it a merging of the two?
Probably, actually. Yeah, it was probably a merging of the two. You know how that goes. Every one of us, we get to where we are based on a combination of factors. So I wanted to have this picture perfect family because I hadn't had it growing up, because I had thought it was a realistic possibility, because I had a very judgmental husband who I wanted to impress. I wanted to prove something to him and all the people around me. And I'm a pleaser. So you put all of that together and it was like, well, my family will be happy if I have a good family. And my husband will be happy if I do a good job with the children. And I'll be proud because all I ever wanted to be was a mom. And if they can do it on TV, I can do it at my house. All of those things kind of put together made me want to have this thing that, again, not realistic, an ideal that I made my goal.
What's your favorite thing about being a mom?
Oh, wow. Don't you think it's just seeing what they do and seeing what they come up with and seeing what comes out of their mouths? You're like, that's part of me and it does that, Oh, look how capable it is. Look how intelligent. Look how interesting. I think seeing how they evolve as people. I look forward to the adulthood part, even though it feels like the childhood is fleeting. It's like my favorite part is just seeing how they grow and what cool people they are becoming, and knowing that they each have their own unique experiences, but they come from the same family, watching all of the little differences and watching those things that just make them individuals. It's really, I just love it. I love it. I love seeing the growth and I love seeing the change. And I love the developing and evolving relationships that we have between mother-son, mother-daughter, as they get older.
Yeah, you mentioned like the sort of that growth and watching them grow. And another one of the themes you're kind of touching on some of these is from this work is sort of those parallel journeys of growth as your children are developing and growing, and how we as mothers also are developing and growing, sort of along the same lines.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And, I find it really interesting. I think because of, issues in my marriage, I really wanted to do the very best I could as a parent. And I still continue to find resources. I still continue to seek out information and kind of evaluate myself. And I still continue to do therapy and all the things that I feel like I can do to really be my best mother self. But, we see a lot of our peers who just kind of stop growing as parents. Again, referring to the childhood age, everybody reads What to Expect for the Young, what to expect when you're expecting, or the toddler years. But a lot of us get so busy, we quit. Realizing our kids need different things now, or our kids, are in a different generation and they maybe aren't going to see things the way we did, or they're not going to have the same context for that level of development. So yeah, I definitely think that kids and parents grow, but I am always kind of surprised that as parents, more of us don't challenge our growth, because I think that benefits our kids. But, you also get tired. Right? We all get tired. So it is hard to say, okay, I've been a parent for 20 years. I'm still going to try to do more and get better. Right? I mean, I taught in the inner city for quite a while. And the experiences of my students were, trauma upon trauma. And, at the time I was going through it myself, but it definitely provided me a lot of perspective. And I think because of all of the obstacles, there was even less time to devote to development and growth. So you'd see, kids raising kids, and you'd see parents repeating really destructive cycles because they didn't know another way. And so I feel like the more we can assess, evaluate our own selves, the more we can provide for our kids. I try really hard to continue to kind of assess and evaluate.
It's ongoing.
Work in progress.
And it changes too, like you said, as each stage or each age or, whatever kind of developmental phase they're in, even as teenagers, even as young adults, it's like, it's not, I always think like back when they're younger, people are like, oh, it'll get easier. And I'm like, I don't think it's easier. I think it's actually more challenging in different ways. Now it's like life choices. It's not just like, are you eating your veggies? These are like big ticket items now out in the world.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I agree with you. It's just crazy that, what does seem insurmountable when they're, a few months old. Oh gosh, the introducing solids or latching or, some of the things that just at the time I remember as a parent feeling overwhelmed by. And now I think to myself, that was a day. That was a few days. That was maybe a month of introducing solids and trying to figure out what they liked. And now you go, wow, I spent 6 months teaching them to drive, and now they're behind the wheel of a vehicle that is, a life or death scenario every time they're in it. It's just, you can't even compare the two. They're so different. So like you're talking about, the weight of the decisions, one's not less important than the other, but it just feels like the weight does get heavier. I guess maybe as we get stronger and we have all these parents, right? We're made to get past some of the little stuff and really handle the big stuff, but it's hard. It's big. This.
Well, yeah, I like how you characterize it as like, carrying the weight gets heavier in a way, but we also get stronger. So in some ways, like we're strong enough now to carry the weight. At least that's maybe, I like to think so.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
We still always work on the upper body though.
Oh,
so
now,
along the lines of that, we're talking about like the next question is what concerns you about how it feels to be a mother?
Oh, I guess the personal feelings I feel on a daily basis are just like second guessing myself. Again, I think it's good to evaluate. I think it's good to self-reflect, but I always wonder, am I doing enough? And I think because of the experiences I had as an adult, I have friends that are so supportive, and I have, a really great circle of people around me that say great things about me as a mom, and my friends support me and compliment my kids. Great. But, if you've got a kid who's great and they're still developing and growing, we don't know how we did as parents until much later in life. Are they 40 and functioning as adults in society? Then we'll know how we did as parents,
Yeah.
right? And so I guess, it feels like it's an ongoing process of finding our identity as a parent, of figuring out what messages to deliver to our children, of how we engage with each other. It's nonstop. It's nonstop for in most ways, in good ways. But, obviously in other ways it's exhausting, and we all know how hard it can be some days, especially when they don't go to sleep at night. Like, oh, they're still awake. What used to be when they were younger, like nap times or bedtimes, like, oh, take a breath. No, that's not there anymore.
Definitely. And now it's their turn not to sleep, right? Like, but for other reasons, because they're out like living their lives and having great time and all of that stuff.
Living their best lives.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. Like I took my son to the airport the other morning at like 5:30 or 6 in the morning because he's going on his third trip of the summer. And I'm like, you are living your best life. But I'm sacrificing sleep to take you to the airport for a trip. And you hear like, oh, they just got back from this event and this thing, and you're like, I swear you have it good, it seems like they do, but they also are busy people. I think they're busier than we were growing up. I think the opportunities for them and the amount of just stuff that you can pack into the schedule has continued to grow over time.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think it's more accessible in so many ways than maybe it was for us and, when we were growing up too. So, and of course it's having, the resources and the time and all of the things to do that too. So
Yeah.
What surprises you about how it feels to be a mom?
Well, I think, like I mentioned earlier, just where I ended up, I probably every day I'm like, this is it. This is my reality. Wow. Their dad passed when he was 41 after, a significant struggle and many relapses with alcoholism. So I've been a full-time single parent since I was 40, actually, because I hadn't turned 41 yet. And, the surprise, I guess, is just, this isn't what I ever expected for myself, but it constantly is some kind of like new reality to face, or there's a new perception or concern to address. Mostly because of that, but then again, just because look at how our kids are growing, look at how much they need every day. So my surprises I just honestly feel kind of continuous. I kind of live, I don't want to say on my heels. I'm just going to say I'm going to be on my toes. I'm on my toes a lot.
Like what you're hearing? We'd love your feedback. Please leave a review.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really great way of characterizing it. Is like motherhood it definitely keeps you on your toes. Yeah. And especially being a single mother, that's to 3 children. That's no small feat.
It is not. No, it's not, it's just the full-time weight of 2 parents on 1 parent, and I think a lot of people feel, again, as their kids get older, that they're more independent and they don't need their parents as much. But I don't know if I believe that. I really feel like the more involved, parents and families can be, the more we feed into these kids, right? So I do as much as I can to engage, our family outside of our immediate home, because it's like support, it's growth, it's love, but it's also just more of what isn't in their daily lives, right? Because their daily lives are their peers, their sports, their church, their school, and they need more than that, for guidance and for growth and direction. But I don't know that we can ever give them everything that they need, right? we just keep trying.
You actually just led us beautifully into the next question, which is, so you were talking about like family and like community and sort of all those things. And so I'm wondering if there are people in your life with whom you talk about how it feels to be a mother.
Oh, absolutely. I would say it's essential to a mom to have a network. I really would. I know that, it's hard if we have full-time jobs, and it's hard if our kids are super busy. But I mean, I've made it a point to really be a person who organizes time with my friends now that the kids aren't doing play dates. But prior to that, I would absolutely go out of my way to make sure we had kind of our little network. And we moved a few times. So that definitely kind of pushed me outside of my boundaries with making new friends and with establishing community. But, from the get-go, it's like I'm part of a mom's club or I'm part of a MOPS, and I would always do what I could to make sure that I was around like-minded parents or parents in a similar stage, because really, truly you can feel so isolated if you don't have other people to talk to. And our moms, they can be there. Mine is, but, she parented one generation back and she parented another, completely different culture. And she comes from a different place. She's one person. She can't be the person who kind of is the only one I bounce ideas off of, or the only person I talk to about my struggles. Ideally, I would have a partner next to me throughout it. But I think with or without one, moms need each other, right? For our sanity, for our community, for our support system, for our comfort. Honestly, sometimes it's just as simple as a shoulder to cry on or someone to help you fold laundry. I mean, my closest friend, when my kids were real little, I had all three of them at home and she had three at home. And I mean, our days were like, we're so overwhelmed. We'll let our kids play and we will literally cook next to each other or fold laundry next to each other because we can't stay in our house any longer. Or, because we just need to talk to an adult, instead of just listening to them. And I think that I've kind of had that as a constant all the way through my parenting journey. So it's been really good for me, because otherwise I don't know without other moms that I would have had the ability to get through and keep my focus on parenting, right? Because you can have other friends through work, and you can have other friends, that are neighbors or that you meet in other contexts, but that definitely changes their priorities, right? And for me, even though I do other things with my friends and socialize with my friends now, it still always circles back to the kids. And I know that we have that common, concern.
Thank you for sharing that. And the point about your mom is also interesting, thinking about the generational differences and certainly the cultural aspect too. I mean, they're always good for seeking advice, but peer to peer, mom to mom, that's absolutely crucial.
It is. But what's interesting too is the conversations I have with my parents. And again, my mom, she grew up in Latin America. My dad grew up in the US. Their generation, even on two different continents, was much less open than ours. So they would have friendships and they would have family, gatherings, and they wouldn't have conversations of depth. I remember my dad telling me once that there were only like there were three taboo topics. One was politics, one was religion, and one was money. So don't even begin to consider talking about something like sex, right?
With your kids, oh, God forbid, yeah.
The thing that everything circled back to was weather. And so like the idea of talking about your mental health or talking about your children's disruptive behaviors or discipline. I mean, there was one way to discipline and they wouldn't talk about it. And there was one way to do things, and children should be seen and not heard. And I remember being told that as a kid, and now, of course, we're so far from that. And I think our kids are even more. I mean, our kids will tolerate any person, I feel, of any orientation or race without thinking much about it, where we kind of started to learn a bit more about difference and diversity. Yeah, our parents, they can't get, right? how different it is from one generation to the next. They
And
try.
that makes me so curious to think about like that we may be those parents, like, when our kids get to be 40s, in their 40s, like,
No,
oh my
we're going to
gosh.
be cool forever. We're always going to be able to relate and engage with them.
I think I haven't been cool in like probably 12 years in their
Yeah.
eyes. Of course, we're 100% cool all of the time, but to them, oh yeah, that cool quotient, like that's a
Well, you
steep
know
slope.
what? People have said that we're not supposed to try to be cool with our kids. We're not supposed to be their friends, right? So I guess that's not the goal. I mean, when I say that, I hope that, especially as they're adults, right? And then we have a different dynamic, that they're still wanting to talk to me and they're still wanting to have a relationship with me that way. Like, I want to be a cool grandma, right?
Right.
That's a realistic goal.
Yeah, that's true. And I also think like, as a parent, like we can define cool in different ways, right? For me, I think like to being a cool parent is someone that your kids can talk to, that they can trust, that they know that you're like a safe landing place, and that that you've got their back, like regardless of the situation. I mean, it's not about like, go hang out at like, I don't know, whatever the things are, but cool. I think cool takes on a different connotation.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, unfortunately, I've seen those challenges firsthand in my community. Like every kid of mine has known, oh, that's a party house. And the parents actually are hosting parties with alcohol. Like that in itself, to me, that doesn't make them cool. That to me is just, it's something I can't even fathom. That's not cool. Yeah, it's the cool house, or it's a cool kid, or it's a fun party, but approachable, absolutely much cooler, right? Or having a relationship, or having some kind of level of communication that's real and genuine. I'll take that any and every day, right? Over buying a keg for my kids' friends, which I just can't imagine doing. Again, back to their dad being an alcoholic. That's only one of many reasons why I can't imagine doing it, right? But it does kind of surprise you that some of the things that we see, I remember that happening when we were growing up. It's like there's parents who just have no boundaries with their kids, and there's parents who are overly strict, with their kids, and that hasn't changed. I like to think I'm somewhere in the middle.
So that brings us to our last question, which is there anything that we haven't talked about how it feels to be a mother that you would like to share?
Oh, wow. That could be a long conversation.
Let's do it.
I mean, think about right. No, think about the amount of time and energy we devote to parenting. And again, me being a parent for 20 years. How many have you been?
We are now on 17, creeping up into 18 here in the next couple months.
Isn't that crazy? So when you think about all the different things you go through, how does it feel to be a mother? It's every emotion, and it's every aspect. It's the full spectrum between yourself and your children, right? Like they go through all these stages. So do we, and they evolve and grow, and so do we. And maybe we also regress. I don't know. But it's just, there's so much. I really feel like if we wanted to talk about what there is to be a mother, you couldn't fit it in a book, which is probably why there are so many. If you go to the bookstore or library, right? You can find hundreds for each stage, or just one particular, disability or need, one particular habit that you want your kids to have. It's just like, it's amazing how big it is, and truly how we don't celebrate it more in our culture.
The celebration, the piece is fascinating to me. I agree with you. I think a lot of times, like you said, it just seems like it's just like it's work. There's an expectation that this is what we are supposed to do. And, I feel like that's where, part of the impetus for this work and this podcast and, telling these stories and having these conversations is so that we can celebrate ourselves. So that we can show up, explore the complexity of emotions along the continuum of motherhood as whole human beings, not just how society says we should feel about how it feels to be a mother, but how it actually feels.
Right. And that's the thing is that you see how much our society has changed, and yet the expectation on women hasn't decreased at all. Right. We can be more accepting of certain cultures, and we can be more progressive in certain ways. And we can say, hey, this is true, which wasn't before, and this is available and it wasn't before. But look at women are still carrying some really heavy weight on their shoulders. And I don't think that for our moms, it was any different than it is for us to try to balance home and work and parenting and relationships. You know, even as much as we'd like to believe we've moved forward as a society, you know, that weight just doesn't get lighter. And it saddens me to say that, really, because I feel like a lot of the time you're seeing dads that are more involved, right, in the parenting. I think you're seeing grandparents that may be more involved. I feel like we're more informed, and that should be something that gives us a leg up. But it's just, I don't think we have it any easier than our moms or our grandmoms. Maybe we have more resources at our fingertips, but then that also means we have more choices to make, and our kids do too. So it's one of those things that I wish we could do, celebrating moms all the time, right? Like, let's have Mother's Days instead of just one.
Right.
Because my kid's dad passed, I'm like, I'll take Father's Day too. It's fine if you want to give me presents twice. Like, it's good, because I'm like very clear. Mother's Day, birthday, like, it's all about me, kids. Don't feel bad if you want to say too many nice things, right? They humor me.
Yeah, I'm always like, more words of affirmation, please. Like,
Yes.
anything you can say, I'll take it.
Yes. Yeah, you better give me a card. You better give me a card.
That's right. The bare minimum is a card. Yeah. It's actually interesting because, we were talking about how, they say when the kids are really young, oh, it gets easier, but it actually is just different. And I feel like that actually, the way that we were talking about like past generations of mothers, I think also the same thing. Like, we don't have it easier now. I think it's easier in some respects, but it's also just different.
Yeah, of course. One of the things that we talked about with, so I'm a teacher. I was a teacher. I'm a teacher by, through my education. And we, in childhood development classes, they always said stuff related to, this can be dated material. You can look at a textbook of child development from, 20, 40 years back, and really the information is still relevant. Kids still process in the same way. Kids still work through the same difficulties. Kids still have the same obstacles. And even though they're maturing a bit sooner and puberty happens a bit sooner, really, we're still pretty close, right? So, it's more about like the context of that growth and development. It's not, whether or not kids grow or develop differently. But, you hear, I think we'll end up saying it, just like our parents and our grandparents, like, kids these days, there's so much more this than we were. I'm like, yeah, sure. No, really, statistically, kids do this at this age, and kids did it at your age too, like when you were their age. Yeah, that's always funny to me. I hope that I'm like, okay, yep. I do recall me being imperfect at that age, so I'll show a bit of grace. I always hope I can be that way, because I didn't have that. When I was growing up, my parents, they just didn't have any of the same experiences that I did. So they couldn't relate, And I think that relatability and that connection is good. So don't let me forget, in 20 years or in 25 years, how it was for me, or don't let them forget how I was to them, so that I can have realistic memories and apply that in a way that's beneficial. Like, in my past experience, but we like to also be selective with our memories. So that's a challenge.
That's true. Yeah. I feel the same way. I'm hoping my kids will keep me in check. I have no doubt that they will. They're doing it now. So
you're like, really, really, thank you. I appreciate your feedback.
Exactly. Great. Here's your comment card. Drop it in the box on your way out.
Yes. You haven't even need a box. They just come at me.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Karina. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, me too. I appreciate the opportunity. I think that the more you can highlight mothers, the more we can be highlighted, in our culture, among each other, and celebrating ourselves. This group of friends that I was telling you about, that I'm so fortunate to have as a support system, we always kind of talk about how we really need to kind of be each other's cheerleaders, you know. And a lot of times women, we're very competitive. We look to our left and we look to our right, and we allow comparison to really take away our joy, right? I don't know who said that. Comparison is the thief of joy. Maybe you remember who authored that quote or that comment. But, you know, it's what we do. We compare ourselves to other women, and we consider ourselves inferior, and we criticize and attack them, when really all we should be doing is just, you know, walking by with pom-poms every time we see a fellow mom. And I know that's probably not logistically ideal, but, you know, to just kind of applaud each one of us, because we're trying, and we do carry a lot of responsibility.
I mean, I'll tell you, like, if it was logistically possible, I'll be carrying pom-poms with me all day, every day. Yeah, that's part of this work. Yeah.
Make it a marketing strategy.
That's
a mini pom-pom with like the tag.
I could totally do that. Yeah. Thank you for your time again, Karina. I'm really grateful. And you've been so generous with your perspectives and your thoughts about how it feels to be a mother. This has been great.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Learn more about how it feels to be a mother by visiting howitfeelstobeamother.com and following us on our socials. Please join the conversation. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this podcast, including those of the host and guests, are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of any entity they represent. Appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The content presented is solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information provided on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast or website is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.